All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We are recording on a Tuesday afternoon. We're going to talk today about Bills-Lions, which has a lot of repercussions in a lot of different markets. We'll talk Dolphins-Texans, a very weird game. And then we'll close out with the Rams-49ers, which is probably a loser goes home game in the NFC West. But let's start off with the big one, Sunday, 4:25 p.m. Eastern. We curled up into a ball of fear watching Bills-Lions. The Lions down to 1.5-point favorites. The total is 55, which is, I'm going to say off the top of my head, the highest of the season. Are you surprised at all, Drew, that the line has shifted towards Buffalo, given it was 2.5 at open?
I think it was a little bit anticipated because there are people who are speculating about the Lions' defensive injuries. I think that's kind of spells both of the market momentum here for both side and total. And who can blame you? If you watched the end of that Thursday night football game, it was pretty clear that the bodies that were out there were fairly on an NFL field. And the Buffalo Bills offense obviously has one of the best, if not the best, current playing quarterback in football leading the helm. So this is a seeming mismatch. I will note, though, that doing a little bit of a deep dive on Dan Campbell's comments from yesterday, I think that there's going to be some surprises here. I got a funny feeling that there were precautionary measures taken with a number of the big bodies who were held out of that Packers game that may ultimately be available for this one. It sounds like Alan McNeil in particular is progressing pretty well through the concussion protocol, and he may ultimately be good to go. DJ Reader also huge impact on the running game for this. I think will likely squeeze into action here, and then anything else you get as far as some of the depth pieces, Levi, and just in general, some of the other guys who are rotational could help fortify the front seven here. And they need to, because the linebacking core as currently constituted is not good. Anzalone and Malcolm Rodriguez were their best two linebackers. They won't be playing in this game. We know that for sure. The safeties are great, but there is a lot of pressure on them to be able to cover a lot of ground, to make up for the linebacking core right now. So this is probably going to be a bit of a back and forth here on the total throughout the week, as people are speculating now that there's going to be, kind of scorched earth with the Lions injury report, at least early in the week. But I will be the one that is trying to time the top here and bet the under when it's at the very peak. 55.5 seems reasonable. And hope that there is some positive news on the injury status. Even if there is not, Jay, the Lions are tasked with, I think, pretty straightforward homework here. Do what the Rams did. Long drives, lots of third down conversions, stay on schedule, eat 10 minutes of the clock when you have to. And honestly, with the way that the Bills defense is playing right now and the strength and sort of the scheme that the Lions bring to the table, it's pretty hand in glove that the Lions are going to look a lot like the Rams did. And you have a Bills team that, of course, is traveled across the country to play in LA last week, now going to Detroit, obviously a much shorter trip, but still second week in a row of travel. And you have a defense in general that is kind of living or dying based on its ability to generate a pass rush. And Taylor Decker looks like he may be good to go. I heard he was relatively close call for that Thursday night game. If it was a Sunday, he probably would have played. So you got a full strength offensive line that's the best in football to neutralize the only strength of the Buffalo Bills defense. I think this is probably time your market entry, get the best price available on the Lions, get the best price available on the under, and hope that the Lions can put this thing away with long, sustained drives and lots of success on the ground. This is one of these games where you may see a huge disconnect between outrageous offensive efficiency, but not a lot of points, because it's just going to be slow, methodical, play matriculation. So hopeful that that's the right side here. But I got to admit, I'm excited for this game. But if you think you have a bona fide best edge of the week in this game, then you're probably barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah, I feel like we're headed for, unfortunately, a redux of Bills-Rams, where the Lions win a close game, but Josh Allen is heroic in defeat. And then everyone's still good with him winning MVP afterwards, and he has to drop one of the last three to actually lose it. Who do you think has the better defense going into this matchup if we assume that McNeil and Reader play?
If you're giving me McNeil and Reader, I'm saying Detroit, and I'm not hesitating. That's because, and it's really just because the secondary. Brian Branch is playing All-Pro 1 safety right now, and he is an absolute nightmare for this Bills team, who is going to try to get it done with a lot of stuff over the middle, a lot of short stuff, a lot of screen game. And Branch, I would expect, is going to be everywhere. Kirby Joseph also playing really well for them at strong safety. And while Terrion Arnold is a walking penalty, Carlton Davis, who I think will go, and Emmett Robertson in the slot are good enough to cover a set of weapons for the Bills that are just kind of So I'm not sure I completely know where the bottom is for how to rate this Bills defense. If you look at sort of EPA per play allowed over the last 5-6 weeks of the season, they're bad. And I don't know that that's 100% true, or if it's more of a just they happen to have played, a couple of teams that were playing up and, some good quarterbacks. But I definitely know that Ben Johnson is conducting this offense like, the Philharmonic, and it is beautiful to watch. And I think he is going to have relatively high success, at least in terms of drive, third down conversion, fourth down conversion, which again can really help put a lid on this total.
Yeah, well, the thing with the Bills defense is that, like, who are the good players on the defense? Like, it's really, it's Christian Benford's had a really good season. Rousseau is fantastic on the edge. The 20 snaps of Von Miller as an edge rusher are very solid, but outside of that, like Teron Johnson and Rasul Douglas are both taking a step back. My man Damar Hamlin is okay, but hasn't covered himself in glory, next to Taylor Rapp, who is also okay, but hasn't covered himself in glory. And then like Matt Milano, who will probably get better, but it's been a rough first couple of weeks for Milano. So yeah, they may just not have the horses again, and we could be headed for what feels like year 5 in a row of Josh Allen doing everything possible in Kansas City, and then losing because his defense cannot stop Dr. Mahomes and company. All right. Before we move on to Dolphins-Texans, stars of the PGA Tour and LPGA team up in Naples for the Grant Thornton Invitational. Find out if Lydia Ko and my man Jason Day can defend their title in Florida from Friday through Sunday on NBC, Golf Channel, and Peacock. Once got mistaken for Jason Day at the Players Championship. Yeah, group of 15-year-olds came up to me asking for a photo. They would be very disappointed if they showed that photo to anyone at any point down the track. Who the hell is this? This isn't Jason Day. The Miami Dolphins, the 3-point underdogs in Houston. The total is 47. This line implies that the Texans are a better team than the Dolphins on neutral. Do you agree with that?
Boy, is this one tough, man. If this was a neutral rest game and the quality that we have seen from this Texans offense through this back half of the season, I would say no. The fact that they have extra time to sort of do a very critical self-evaluation about what's going wrong has me somewhat hopeful that the Texans are the right side here. The general kind of read that you had for CJ Stroud and company last year was they really peaked in the fourth quarter of the season. Like, it was pretty clear that they came in hot in that playoff run. They were incredible against the Browns in that one playoff win. And I think a lot of it had to do with sort of self-scouting and, kind of leaning into who are our best players. Well, their best player from a skill position standpoint is clearly Nico Collins. And Nico Collins now gets an extra week to get right. And Nico Collins has a decent matchup against a Miami defense that I thought was figuring things out, but then kind of has slipped back into the middling of the NFL. If you go from week 8 to today, and we're looking at EPA per play without turnovers, Miami's 21st. They're kind of in the mix right now with the Tennessee Titans and the Jets in terms of EPA per play allowed. That's not good. And I think that the Texans are still kind of anchored by a very good defense. They certainly at least have, I think, the skill at CB1 to neutralize Tyreek Hill. So it's going to come down to, I think, really the matchup of wide receiver 2 against CB2, because they've never really figured that out, as Kamari Lassiter has been in and out for health reasons this season. And I don't have a strong read about whether he'll be good enough to go at full strength here. But if he's out there, that obviously helps the Texans pass defense, because their pass rush should eat here. This is not an especially good pass blocking unit, in my opinion. They get a lot more credit than they deserve, because Tua usually gets the ball out of his hands in under 2 seconds. But I think ultimately this is a decent opportunity for the Texans, if they can find any improvement offensively in this game relative to what we've seen from them recently. With the extra rest that they're afforded, then they can play with the lead, and that really helps this defense kind of pin their ears back and be their most effective. So I get why there is a sort of I would say maybe a sharpish consensus that Miami is the right side at 3. In general, at this time of year, if you're going to give me 3 points with a quarterback who's playing top 5 quality football, I'll take them. But the extra rest here for the Texans, I think, could do them a world of good, as they were sort of one of the teams that were pretty obviously keyed as needing the extra rest. If this were a completely neutral game, I would expect to see something more like Houston -1.5. But again, with the extra rest and with some of these players coming back, and with Nico Collins getting healthier and having a decent matchup against the pass D that's struggling, I'll take Houston here at -3, cheap -3.
So since week 7, which for CJ Stroud is 7 games, it's 8 games for a lot of the rest of the league. Since week 7, CJ Stroud ranks 31st in PFF grade out of 37 qualifying quarterbacks. In that time, 7 games, he has 5 passing touchdowns and 5 interceptions and a 58.6 completion percentage. Superstar quarterbacks such as Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Kirk Cousins, Drake May, Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, all of these guys rank ahead of Stroud. And I think that is somewhat consistent with the eye test, where he has just looked off. He's looked kind of rattled. He's thrown inexplicable picks and near picks. Do you think that the right kind of conventional wisdom on Stroud is that his offensive line cratered at a point during the season, and it shook him a little bit and sped him up, and he hasn't really been able to get all the way back? Do you think it's just that Nico Collins was covering up for a lot of sins, or what do you think has been wrong with Stroud?
I kind of honestly, I'm going to sound like a Stroud apologist here. I want to hang this around the neck of Mr. Bobby Slowick. They are consistently off schedule. They have, throughout his entire career, they have forced him to create magic in really, really difficult down and distance. And you can tell that there will be some regression for young quarterbacks when they're, kind of completing and kind of extending at unsustainable rates, which is what Stroud largely did for, a full season and almost a half. This year, particularly at the beginning of the season, eye test was not great for Houston. I watched a lot of their football in the first half of the season, and Stroud got away with a lot of turnover-worthy plays. It was pretty clear that Slowick kind of came in expecting to change the identity a bit, be a little bit more of a vertical passing attack. And, with a healthy offensive line and with the weapons that they had to start this year, no fault if that's your plan. Like that, that seemed like the right strategy. But yeah, the offensive line has been truly horrible, and the running game has been wildly inconsistent. And honestly, the sequencing of play calls is probably my biggest gripe, because it's very predictable. Defenses have a very strong read on when and where they are going to exercise the running game. If you can kind of think back to like the Saints last year, right? And the breath of fresh air that Clint Kubiak was at the start of this year, where they went from very, very predictable to very unpredictable because they were using more play action and more motion. It's just those elements of the offense just haven't been there for the Texans this year, and it's making it hard on everyone. And then at some point, as expected, the growing pains came to rear their ugly head, as CJ Stroud is still a very young player, and because he was already anointed as sort of a top 5 guy, or at least a top 10 guy, I think preseason, it has made his, coming back to earth feel a little bit more accelerated than it actually ought to feel, because, the players this young, we used to give them lots of grace, lots of time to grow. He has a playoff win under his belt, for crying out loud. Like, this guy is ultimately going to be around for a long time, and he's going to have a successful career. I just think that he needs more help from his offensive coordinator. And I think that the fact that he has a healthy Nico Collins back, Stroud got a lot of credit last year, Jay, down the stretch. a lot. And what you saw, if you watched a lot of tape, was Nico Collins butting into a bona fide wide receiver one. Like, no doubt, top 10 guy that you want to go to war with. And he hasn't been there because of injury for a lot of the season. When he has been there, he has been the guy that has made those spectacular, unreal conversions to sustain drives. And I think there is certainly scope for his kind of full health down the home stretch here to be a differentiating factor for this Texans offense. That said, are they a team that I would back with any type of confidence in a playoff matchup? Maybe only if they were playing the Steelers. Are there any other kind of team in the mix right now for that 4-5 matchup? I think you're looking at the dog.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why at this point the Texans should be considered any better than teams like the Rams and the Dolphins and the Commanders and these type of teams that hover around being slightly better than neutral, like the Bucks. Even I think the Texans, they're probably better than teams like the Bucks and the Seahawks, but I don't think it's that much of a gap. And the rest advantage better do a fair bit for them against Miami. I think the one thing with the Dolphins is that on face value, wasn't an overly impressive win against the Jets, given that they had to claw it out by the skin of their teeth in the end and win a game that they were 6-point favorites. But Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle combined for over 200 yards, which is kind of what was expected all season and just hasn't been happening. So they look fine. And then the defense, even though it wasn't a great performance and it was the best that Rodgers had looked, I think, since week 3 against the Patriots, the Jets offense always in theory has had this upside where if Rodgers is going to play well and Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson are going to do what they're capable of doing, which is still like they're both top 20 wide receiver talents in the league still, I think. So there's always been upside for that Jets offense. For what it's worth, Connor Rogers is close to the Jets. He's talking on Fantasy Football Happy Hour about how Olu Fashanu coming in at left tackle and playing really well, replacing a kind of an aging out Tyron Smith, has supposedly just given Rodgers a lot more confidence, just being able to stand in the pocket and not be as jittery because not being as worried about getting hit. So, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, Tyron Smith is grading okay, but eye test didn't look great, and he had a mare of a game against the Bills from recollection. So perhaps Fashanu, who's really seemingly grown into his role, maybe that makes the Jets just a much better offense going forward, and that in the context of this game makes the Dolphins' performance look less dire in terms of how their defense did against the Jets. So some reasons for optimism. I mean, this should be an average defense, I think, overall, and a little less boom or bust than the Texans' defense, which is it looks incredible when it's rolling and then looks horrific when they're getting beaten deep for explosive plays, as is their want. But I think they're somewhat similar levels. And then on offense, I think I have more faith in Miami's offense the way it's operating at the moment.
Yeah, a lot to respond to. I love all of that context. I have the Miami Dolphins defense rated 16th right now. I have Miami overall offense 9th, overall 1.7 better than an average on a neutral. I do 100% agree that Houston is right there, kind of mired with the likes of. I have them pretty close. I have them under the Rams. I have them under Cincinnati. I have them above Tampa. I have them very close to San Francisco right now. So there is kind of a cluster right there of around teams that are a hair better than average, and the Texans are in the mix. The one kind of situational factor that I think might matter for this game that we didn't bring up yet, there was a moment where the Miami Dolphins got offense with Mike McDaniel got solved. It was against the San Francisco 49ers in week 13 of 2022. This was an absolutely unstoppable unit up until that game. And who was the defensive coordinator that effectively solved it? It was DeMeco Ryans. So there is certainly extra time for him to prepare a game plan that truly frustrates this Miami offense, I think. If Houston is aggressively, if they're aggressive with the wide receivers, chipping them at the line, really being physical, as we watch the first and second quarters and the refs are letting them play, then game on. Like, it's going to be tough for this Miami offense to sustain offense, because right now their running attack is just nothing to write home about. So I think that Miami in a negative game state is in deep trouble in this one, which is kind of why, if anything, I would lean Texans -3. I think Miami would have been a fun story if they could have put together some wins in that absence of Tua, when they were, losing to the likes of the Titans. And unfortunately, they're probably out of the playoff mix with a loss this weekend.
It was the Colts game. That was the one that they really should have had.
Yes,
and that was in the bag.
And it's a tiebreaker.
They should have, like, the Cardinals game, that's like a 50-50 coin flip. If they lose to the Bills by field goal, again, that's, they're going up against the Bills in Buffalo. You don't expect to win that. And I don't think they got really screwed in that one or anything. But the Colts one, where Richardson was losing his mind, and they really just should have squeaked out the win there. They didn't. Outside of that, like, since Tua's come back, 1 point loss to the Cardinals, field goal loss in Buffalo, a very kind of comprehensive win over the Rams that they effectively blew the Rams out, and had Stafford under siege. And then the Rams scored late, and then they blow out the Raiders and the Patriots, and they beat the Jets. It's just that ugly loss to the Packers in between, which really hurt them. But I think this is an above average team.
Surely.
It's just that they're probably just not going to be able to overcome the stretch where they didn't have Tua. And that's kind of on the team. Like, they should have been able to eke out. Why are you losing by 19 points to the Titans? Like, you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Could you not manufacture any offense whatsoever? Disappointing season for Miami, but not done yet. They still have a material chance of making the playoffs. It's just an improbable one. So if they win this game, then they're back in business. So perhaps the book is not closed yet on the Dolphins. Before we get to another couple of slightly above average teams in the Rams and 49ers, it's an NFC battle in the Pacific Northwest on Sunday night when Jordan Love and the Packers square off with Geno Smith and the Seahawks. Coverage of the matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out with big game. This will be fun. Thursday Night Football, Rams at 49ers. Line's been bouncing around all over the place. Right now it is Niners -2.5. The total is 48.5. I feel like, Drew, the Rams are a very known commodity at this point. The offense is elite, and it has been whenever Kupp, Puka, and Kyron and Stafford have been on the field together. But I think the important component of that is that they need the O-line healthy as well, because all those guys are out there against the Dolphins from memory, and it wasn't pretty because the O-line was banged up and Stafford was under siege. Now the O-line is healthy, so I think this is an elite all-world offense, and then the defense just isn't very good. They can get pressure off the edge, but outside of that, they don't really have anything in the back end, and it's not pretty. The Niners, though, don't really know what to do with this team at the moment. Do you think that the Niners offense is fixed after they lit up Chicago?
I don't. I was fixed in that game at times. George Kittle back mattered a lot. Juwan Jennings being a difference maker mattered a lot. Brock Purdy got hurt at the end of that game. Isaac Guerrero got hurt at the end of that game. It was a foot sprain. I don't think he's playing this week. I have no idea what the next man up it looks like for the running back room in San Francisco right now. But Trent Williams still obviously dealing with issues, and I guess it's Patrick Taylor Jr. Next man up in the running back room. And I honestly, if this was a game on Sunday and they had a full week to rest and recuperate, and they're at home again, then I will completely live with a market that says they are marginally better than the Rams. It's not. This is a short week, and there's lots of familiarity between these two teams. I know that Kyle Shanahan was the boogeyman for Sean McVay for a long time. Outside of that NFC Championship win, there are not a lot of moments where Sean McVay covered himself in glory against this Niners team until recently, eking out a last week of the season win last year and an extremely fluky lucky win at the beginning of this season. So, there are certainly, kind of historical context and matchup advantages that favor a Niners in the spot. But if Brock Purdy is dealing with the injuries that look to me to be non-trivial on a short week, then I'm not expecting him to be able to, just absolutely carve this Rams defense, which is very carvable. But I think that, if there is a team in a unit that is quote unquote fixed, this is Rams offense. These guys are for real. They are benefiting obviously from health and continuity over the last handful of weeks at the offensive line. They are benefiting from a nice little stretch where Matthew Stafford is sun running. He's obviously, you mentioned the Miami game a couple times. I agree, like that was a standout negative, but over a balance of the season, you're going to have a couple of stinkers, and that was one of his. I think really over the back half of the season, he is right there in the top 10 as far as rating quarterbacks, particularly with what McVay is calling right now. And a lot of that has to do with the health of Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua is a top 3 wide receiver right now. I don't think there's a very significant argument to make there. I think he's pretty clearly in the tier or just below the Jeffersons and Chases of the world. And the reason that I feel that way is that he does so much in the running game, and so much of the kind of Rams offense is structured around his motion that, he is sort of the cheat code for getting what they want in terms of looks and giving Matt Stafford the opportunity to, find the right play. Now, Stafford in general, like I got to point out, like that 4th down conversion he had to Tutu Atwell, that was all him. Had that unbelievable read. That was his 3rd or 4th option in that play. He finds him. He anticipates and places it where only he can catch it, and Tutu Atwell makes the play, and that effectively saved their season. This is a team bringing momentum into this matchup, and in particular on the offensive side of the ball is playing with extreme confidence right now. And so, if they can get a little bit of a pass rush on Purdy, which they should be able to do with the state of the offensive line for the Niners, then I think the Rams can win this one. So I'm not expecting to see Rams +3 materialize. If it does, that's a great bet. I think this should be closer to a pick. And I think ultimately I'm going to end up on Rams money line, even though I have a lot of Rams futures, which is another way to attack this one. Because the Rams, you mentioned, or you kind of teased at the top, this is a quasi-limit, loser goes home game. A lot of ways that the Rams can still find their way into the playoffs, even if they lose this one. They hold a lot of cards right now in terms of controlling their destiny. And, they have a tough schedule down the home stretch for sure. But the win against the Bills really helps launch them, really unlocks a lot of potential for them to steal a playoff spot in a crowded NFC. So, I think they can get this win. I think that there's upside in Rams futures. And I think that in general, there's the quarterbacks who exist in the NFC right now, who are going to be in the playoff picture. Not a lot of success in the playoffs there. Matt Stafford's probably going to be the only guy with a quarterback ring. With the Super Bowl ring, if he makes it into the mix. And you have, of course, Hurts has been there. You have Goff has been there. You have Jordan Love has won a playoff game. But experience certainly matters at the quarterback position, and Stafford is as cool as they come, and you can't necessarily defeat him by just ramping up the pressure and bringing blitz. He has that figured out and answers, all over the place for when that happens. And I think the offense continuing to get healthier, more weapons available, Kyron Williams picking up steam, Corum being a nice change of pace. Everything that I see right now going on with the Rams offense has me pretty fired up. So I think they're the right side here. And Niners need to, do some serious reflection about what they want to be as a team heading into next year, because this probably does eliminate them.
Yes. Couple things. Firstly, that 4th and 5 play to Tutu Atwell. I very rarely get inspired or goosebumpy from sports anymore, because just kind of my life being centered around betting on sports has kind of deadened me in a way to that stuff and just cheering home results. Though perhaps Luis Heel, whose jersey is behind me, and my daughter's really loving going to Yankee Stadium. Maybe that will enliven some surprising Yankees fandom. But that play, that was sick. And that was so fun to watch. And it was just everything that built it. It wasn't just the play itself, but it was the arc of Sean McVay and his decision-making. And we talked about this the other day, but the fact that he has been so conservative over the journey, which has been the one knock on him as a coach, that he doesn't go for it on 4th down enough. It's not even he doesn't go, he just makes the wrong decision in high leverage game management situations, costs them playoff game against the Lions, and then to be in that spot and to understand the moment, and then to just have the perfect play. And for Stafford just to be so ice cool and calm and take down Josh Allen in that spot, or at least to keep Allen on the sidelines. Though to be fair, if McDermott doesn't, well, if the Bills don't run the stupid play at the goal line and Allen just steps back and throws a touchdown, then they may very well have won the game anyway, being down 9 with 90 seconds left. But alas, they did not. And so that was awesome for them to get that done, a real statement. And it's always hard to read into the emotional aspects of football and how much, Dan Campbell's kind of cultish Lions and him believing that, and him telling them that they're all there for a reason, how much that actually leads into like going on the field and producing higher EPA per play because you feel so enlivened. But you have to think that the Rams, that will be a momentum builder in a way for their season. We'll see how it manifests or not. But in terms of the Rams and going forward and their upside, watching that Bills game, thinking like, why can't this team like make the Super Bowl? Like, why are they worse? Why are they that much worse than any of these teams? Their defense is bad. Guess what? Every defense is bad. No, none of these contending defenses are scary at all. The Ravens defense sucks. The Bills defense sucks. The Chiefs defense is an abomination at the moment. The Lions have no players left. To me, like looking at the EPA standings defensively, like, how does Houston have the 4th best defense? Do they even have a good defense? Detroit is 2nd on the season. Like, to me, the only 2 defenses, I would say, over the past 4, 6, 7 weeks that really kind of look imposing to me are the Eagles. And then when they don't have Levi Wallace out there, the Broncos. Those are the 2 defenses that I watch. I'm like, all right, these are actually good defenses. Everyone else, it's like, I don't think any of these defenses are scary at all. The Chargers are 6th. Chargers couldn't do anything to stop Lamar Jackson or to stop Patrick Mahomes down the stretch in what was a kind of shaky game for the Chiefs. So I think that the Rams, the issue is that they're still an underdog to make the playoffs. So it's hard for in a futures market for there to be a lot of value. And the fact too that, they're not going to get a high seed. So they're very likely going to get only 1 home game maximum in the playoffs. I do think it is handy that, this is getting a little bit in front of your skis, but the fact that the Super Bowl is in a dome, which I do think helps Matthew Stafford and the Rams if they ever do get to that point. But I mean, this offense, I think, is just unstoppable if they can stay healthy. To your point about Puka, we mentioned this the other day as well, but I think I would take Jefferson 1. I think I would take Chase 2, and I think I would take Puka 3. I'd have those guys just over CeeDee Lamb, who's probably the 4th guy. And we'll see if A.J. Brown wants to get back into the conversation because he would have been there last year, but not as good of a season this year for A.J. And it's funny because the Rams are going up against the San Francisco 49ers, and it feels like the Rams are the much higher upside team the rest of the way. Do you think there's any chance that the Niners, they get Bosa back, Dre Greenlaw comes back, Hufanga, and they can kind of get back to being a +4 type of team, and they do right the ship?
Yeah, it's possible. It's going to all come down to Purdy staying healthy and playing at the level we saw in the first quarter of the season. And I'm not sure he's there physically. I'm not sure that Shanahan really knows what to do right now with the weapons he's got, particularly the injuries that they've now sustained at the running back position. And a lot of what I was excited about when I thought the Niners were coming was Christian McCaffrey's back, and that unlocks some of their short passing game, which kind of helps create more space. It helps with a lot of the traffic issues that they were dealing with over the central portion of the field, which was forcing Brock Purdy into the higher degree of difficulty throws, tight windows, and that's just not a sustainable way to live when you don't have Brandon Ayuk out there. But the Niners, I think, if I had to say, well, what happens? They lose this game, and then they just play spoiler down the stretch. And they ruin things for teams who are still holding on to a glimmer of playoff hopes, or holding on to a hope for a 1 seed in Detroit. That game was going to be a
week
lot of fun.
17 Monday Night Football game, because that can be a coronation spot for the Lions in a
Dan
lot
Campbell,
of ways.
Coach of the Year, yeah.
Potentially, yeah. I think if Campbell, I think it's not loser goes home, because Allen, his stature is at such a high point now that I don't think if he loses to Detroit, he's done for MVP by any means. I think he has to lose somewhat ingloriously to really kind of put him in a dire spot. But certainly a loss hurts anyway. But I think if Dan Campbell loses to the Bills, that it deflates a little bit with the Coach of the Year case. I don't think he's dead by any means if he can, right the ship from there and go 15-2 and beat the Niners on Monday Night Football to get in position for the 1 seed, and then beat Kevin O'Connell, who's the second favorite in that market, in Week 18 to clinch the division and the 1 seed. But I think it'll get a little bit shaky, and people will step back and be like, Lions are pretty good last year. They're in the NFC title game. Kevin O'Connell's 14-3 with Sam Darnold, and Dan Quinn is 11-6 for a team that won 4 games last year. And Mike Tomlin has resuscitated 2 different quarterbacks in the same season. Looks like he's going to win the division. It's a very strong Coach of the Year field this year, and I think that Campbell will deflate a bit with a loss, but still plenty that can happen there, and in the MVP race as well. All right, we are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCSports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.